Hey everybody, and today we're here to talk about Path of Exile 2, the first major patch that the game is getting. This isn't a hotfix, this is a major patch. There's a lot of changes in here. Despite only being 2 days out, this is probably going to be one of the more major patches that the game gets. I'm going to take the time to read through all of it, and as much time as it takes me, because I like talking about games, and if you like listening about games, here you go. I'm not going to do a quick rundown or anything like that, so if you want a video like that, this isn't going to be it, unfortunately. Feel free to put me on your TV while you listen, put me on your second monitor and listen while you play a game, anything like that. But if you want to go ahead and leave me a comment saying to take less time and to maybe use less time making an introduction, that's fine too. Engagement is great. So, let's talk about Path of Exile 2. Let's set this up really quick. What are some of the major complaints that people have had? Well, depending on what community you're from, the Path of Exile 1 community has had complaints about literally everything. Literally everything. I think they actually pooped their pants, and Grinding Gear Games was somehow to blame for that. Okay, let me preface this video with something about Path of Exile 1 players. I'm not sure they actually understand how to play an ARPG, because a lot of the complaints I get from people who've supposedly been playing these games for a decade or plus is, like, some of these complaints just don't make sense to me, and I barely play ARPGs, right? Like, I just don't understand some of these complaints. So while this patch will be addressing some of their complaints, this is not, in fact, making the game Path of Exile 1. My personal complaint, actually, is that the Act 2, the cruel difficulty, and the maps actually have too little HP, and actually there's too much damage scaling as you get into the game. Far from there not being enough damage or there not being enough fun or anything like that, I'm actually running into the recurring issue where I'm killing enemies too quickly to where they're actually dying before I get to do any fun combos to them, which I'm sure you'll actually start realizing as you progress through the game. I myself, of course, have already put 54 hours into the game, and I'm already on maps, and I've already cleared a lot of maps, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah. So, let's talk about dodge roll changes first off. Okay. Oh, I should mention, some of these changes have already been deployed without a realm restart. Others will be deployed in an upcoming patch. So, just keep that in mind. Not all of these are live. They haven't really specified which is which can be a bit frustrating, I'm sure. So a lot of players have expressed frustrations about being trapped in by monsters, which I do agree with. It is frustrating when that happens to you. My only concern when I already read a statement like this is things bad are frustrating, and I think that's a general statement. If anything is bad, it's frustrating, but things have to be frustrating or else nothing bad happens to you. No one will ever die and think, yay, that was great, right? So you kind of need frustrating elements. You need things that can kill the player, and certainly being trapped in by enemy monsters is one of those. Now the question is, of course, is it too easy to be trapped? Is being trapped too much of a penalty? And does it happen too often? There's one issue I've seen with being trapped that actually isn't really fixable, and that is, in particular, if you're playing a fighter and you are completely trapped in by enemies, you can't leap strike because it'll immediately target the enemies nearby. However, because fighter has so many AoEs, and because there's so many ways to brute force through enemies, and there's ways to space out before you get trapped, I don't think this is nearly a big issue as people think. I think we already might be overcorrecting, but the change isn't that big a deal. So let's think here. While it is intended that monsters are able to trap and kill you, we felt that the frequency of this was a little too high. We'll be deploying the following changes in an upcoming patch. Player size is now set to 0 units while dodging instead of 1 unit. Some smaller monsters can now be pushed while dodge rolling. This includes monsters such as adorned beetles in Keth. This should result in getting trapped less often. Note that you can still be trapped. A player size of 0 can still not phase through monsters, but it can go through even the smallest gap between them. So, it does seem to be a middle ground where they want you getting trapped. My concern here is that if you can get through even the smallest gap, and it's not like monsters are like perfectly shield walling and locking in on you, right? My concern here is that basically it's going to be impossible to get trapped, and dodge roll will become one of those annoying things where they basically, if dodge roll starts being OP and dodge roll starts being needed to get out of situations like this, and if everyone starts spamming dodge roll all the time, you end up in a situation, as of right now, dodge roll is not really that much better than just walking. A lot of people don't really seem to understand that. In a lot of ways, dodge roll is worse than walking because you can cancel any move into a dodge roll, but you can't cancel a dodge roll. So dodge roll is the only action currently in the game that you need to commit a full animation to, I think. I think that's probably true. At either rate, I hope dodge rolling and kind of just using it way too often doesn't just become too overpowered. I also think, once again, the developers need to be concerned about, like, you can't remove all the frustration in a game. You know, in a lot of ways, and I do mention this a lot, this game is a lot like Dark Souls. It is like that, right? The design philosophy seems to be similar in a lot of ways. People meme it and people say they call everything Dark Souls, but like, actually, in a lot of ways, the design philosophy of this game is really weirdly similar. Probably more similar than a lot of people think, because a lot of people haven't actually played the older Dark Souls games, Demon Souls. They haven't actually played those, and they don't realize that, like, in a lot of ways, yeah, actually, this is, like, bizarrely similar. So we have checkpoint changes. A lot of players have been reporting that it can be tedious to need to retread areas of the map in order to get back to objectives that they've already found. So, my personal opinion, I actually like the big maps. I think the windiness is cool. I think it's amusing to me that for a community and a group of people that so much put Diablo 2 on a pedestal and talk about Diablo 2 as if it was this perfect, great, best game ever made, they also seem to have a lot of issues with Diablo 2 and actually hate a lot of what it did. In particular, Diablo 2 often had windy maps, and they also did have dead ends, and you did get lost a lot. Now, maybe if you played the game for 20 years and you've recognized every generation pattern and you have 90 billion mobility abilities that you wouldn't have had when you were new to the game, maybe then the issue wouldn't have been as noticeable to you. Well, even calling it an issue, it's not an issue, it's just the game. That's just the game, right? And I do think that a lot of these players need to understand that a game that is Diablo 2, except with the needless min-maxing the fun out of the game removed, there is an audience for a game like that. If I can't min-max the fun out of a game, there is an audience for that. And of course, long, windy maps that are large and have lots of dead ends, that is just kind of part of the game. That's kind of part of exploring it. I never really got frustrated by that, and I didn't understand how so many people were memeing it. But let's look at what they did. I do think what they did here is actually pretty good, pretty interesting. I do like what they did. We're deploying the following changes in an upcoming patch. Clicking on a checkpoint will allow you to teleport to other checkpoints in the area that are explored in your minimap. I do like that change. So you go to a checkpoint, you can teleport between any checkpoints. So particularly some of these very large maps you can get through without so much tedium. Act 3 is pretty bad for this. Some of those later Act 3 maps are pretty bad. You're still trying to rescue Alva, if you didn't know that. We're all still trying to rescue Alva. Your entire life is still an Act 3 map, and it would still be smaller than some of them. Checkpoints have been added to all entrances and exits of zones to allow for teleportation. This seems fine too. Going into the next zone and activating the waypoint, then coming back was already the default way to go, and that'll still probably be the default way to go, because anything like a disconnect or just getting sidetracked or getting ADHD or anything like that, any of those will very much break your ability to just reach the waypoint. So just click on if you see the next zone, click in it, go in it, activate the waypoint, go back to the previous zone, and then do all the objectives there, and then you can just waypoint out. But this is a good change as well. A checkpoint is been added to the midpoint of the first Dreadnought area. I never actually understood the complaints about Dreadnought. I thought it was kind of supposed to be like a gauntlet. You know, I thought it was supposed to, because like they called it Dreadnought, it had all the enemies, blah, blah, blah. There's all these choke points and stuff to kill people on. I thought it was supposed to be like a slow, grindy area. I guess a lot of people did have complaints with that. I don't exactly hate it. So it's not like bothering me that they added this checkpoint. It's fine. It's like whatever. We'll be making further adjustments to checkpoint positions. We continue to gather feedback. Okay. Now, one of the major problems that players have been experiencing is feeling that the game is not rewarding enough. I actually think it is. And I had a full set of rares by the second difficulty that were pretty good. I think what a lot of people that play ARPGs never actually learned is how to play ARPGs. And I once again, I keep saying this because it's so weird to me. You've got things like gambling, drops, crafting, and just generally upgrading your gear, right? So there are enough avenues to get your gear upgraded, and as the later and later in your game you went, the more drops would increase. I don't know if you guys remember this, but once again, I'm going to relate this back to Diablo 2. In Diablo 2, you weren't just chain dropping rares by like level 10, but I think there's a lot of people, they kill one boss and they're like, okay, where's my unique? I've literally seen people suggest that every single rare enemy should drop a rare and every single rare chest should drop a rare. And all I can think of is, if they do that, they're going to have to add a bunch of useless modifiers to items to make sure that they're not always good, because if they're always good, then you're going to run into the issue where you just have too much good gear and it stops being rewarding to find anything, right? So the more they increase drops, the more they're going to have to make drops bad so that players aren't like constantly invalidating. Like, I don't want to spend 3, maybe 4 hours finding an upgrade, putting all my gems and shit in it, upgrading it, using all my whetstones, and then like 15 minutes later, oops, I found another one anyway. And then 15 minutes later, oops, I found like that I wouldn't be attached to or even care about any of my gear. There's an area that we had to be very careful when adjusting because it's very hard to reduce drops if we increase it by too much, which is true. If they try to reduce drops, the player base will generally get mad, because people don't like being nerfed. I, over the years, have come to like being nerfed because I find that way too many developers are way too swingy with their community. They're way too beholden to their community, and they tend to do too much to just appease them. And buffing is kind of like a short-term endorphin rush, if you want to call it that, right? Like, if you get buffed, it's short-term, you feel better, big numbers, big loot, big fun, right? But slowly and over time, that rush will go away and you'll just go back to normal, because this will now be your new normal. Your new normal will now be getting this much gear. If you want to see a great example of this, in my opinion, was Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 did these huge buff patches where they buffed everything, and people said, this will save the game. The game will be solved forever. Well, the player count is right back to the lowest it's been, right back when everything was air quote nerfed and the game was unplayable. The same people are playing it now as when the game was unplayable, despite everything being nerfed, or despite everything being buffed. You know what I mean? It's a short-term emotional gain at the cost of long-term fun for the game. But I do think items were probably a little bit undertuned. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. We've identified We've identified a few key areas that we believe will significantly improve the experience that players are having. Rare monster changes. We felt that rare monsters were not rewarding enough. Well, they were. They just didn't drop rares all the time. This didn't affect the campaign as much because there are more unique bosses, increasing the overall amount of drops, but it's especially noticeable when playing in the endgame, where unique monsters are less common. They could have fixed this by adding more unique monsters in the endgame. There's actually a recurring problem, and I've talked to people about this. Sorry if this is kind of a spoiler, but there's just clearly not enough unique monsters in the endgame at all. There's not enough bosses, and because of that, as of right now, and this is what I was talking about earlier with enemies not having enough HP, if I have to go through 10 maps to fight one unique monster, the problem that is clearly occurring to me is it's very rare for me to fight anything tanky enough to actually combo. Most everything dies in like 2 hits. If I hit a rare enemy, I can 2-hit them. And the problem is, without these bosses to actually be able to combo and have fun on, a lot of builds are just devolving to AoE spamming, which is definitely a complaint that I thought that Path of Exile 2 was going to be addressing. I definitely thought they did not want the game to just devolve down into mindless room clearing. And that's kind of what it is right now, because there's just not enough enemies that can stand up to you. In particular, the reward you were getting for increased difficulty of rares wasn't lining up. We deployed the following changes. Rarity bonus per rare mod has been doubled. Sure. 10% quantity bonus per rare mod increases the chance of rare monsters inherently having more modifiers as you progress through the endgame. Now, the thing is, these increased modifiers, as I've played more and more of the game, I assure you this isn't going to be more fun, although the quantity bonus per rare mod is going to be cool, I guess, in a way. Let me tell you, some of these modifiers right now are pretty brutal, and they're pretty brutal in a way that if you don't instantly notice what the rare enemy is doing, if you don't instantly pay attention, they can get on top of you and basically just kill you, and there's not much you can do. I fought one that almost killed me instantly. I noticed in like the 1 second I had what was going on, but it was a rare mob that depleted my mana as he was next to me, but also made it so I couldn't heal if he was next to me, but also had bleed. Bleed does considerably more damage if you're moving. So you try to heal, you can't heal, you're out of mana, you try to run away, boil wait, now you're taking massive damage. And I noticed one thing I could do was dodge roll away, instantly pop my potion, get a little bit of HP, then it would turn off my healing as he ran next to me. I did that like 2 or 3 times in a row, got my health back up, but had I not like instantly noticed that, it would have killed me. So increase the chance of rare monsters inherently having more modifiers as you progress through the endgame. I'm a bit worried that the basically ranged characters right now don't really seem to have that many modifiers that just ruin their life. There are a couple that are bad, but unless you get those couple that are deliberately made to be anti-range, there's a lot of modifiers in the game right now that screw over melee pretty hard. And once you combine even 2 or 3 of them, you can very quickly end up in a situation where, boy, these changes will cause rare monsters' rewards to naturally scale up as you get to higher levels, because the number of mods a monster can have increases throughout the campaign and into endgame. In addition, many other forms of map juicing will indirectly cause rare monsters to have more mods as well, increasing the rewards of these other mechanics too. Also note the change below to make sure each map has a minimum number of rares will also increase the average number of rare mods, thus increasing drops further. I actually was running maps last night, and I was getting so many items. I was getting like 3, 4, 5 rares per map. And I think that felt right to me. I was increasing my gear at a considerable rate. I was, in the span of one night, I had gotten like 30% of each resistance. I'd gotten like 200 HP. I'd increased my damage significantly. I had gotten a lot more stats and things, and my build was progressing. And I fear that if you look at the endgame map, you guys know how it works. This looks like a thing that's going to be played for like 100, 200, 500 hours, right? So if in the span of a couple nights of playing the game, you can rapidly increase your gear at the rate, I'm a bit worried it's going to end up being a bit too much. I don't want an entire inventory of rares where none of them end up being useful, and I have to start using really annoying add-ons to even determine which items are worth it. Like I want on average rares to be useful, which on average I would say they are right now. Maybe not for you, but maybe for someone. But once we start getting more and more rares, effectively what happens is we go from one modifier is good, one good modifier is good, right? But then we go to, you need 2 good modifiers, but then you need 3 good modifiers, but then you need 4 good modifiers, right? Basically, the more rares that drop, it actually makes rares less and less useful, because the average quality of your gear set is just going to continue to increase. Eventually, it's going to be, look, if I don't have a chest plate that gives me strength, armor, HP, frost resist, fire resist, and cold resist, then it's useless. And if we reach that point, then it doesn't matter how much the increase drops, because you would need to drop 900 billion rares to get one that actually, could beat, And I think that would be solved with currency and crafting, and actually being able to determine which stat on an item do I reroll. What kind of category do I want to start? Certainly mages right now. I have some mage friends, and it's quite frustrating for them because they need plus level to skills, but plus level to spell skills, well, that doesn't affect minions. Plus level to minion skills, well, that doesn't affect spells. Do you get where this could be frustrating? Plus level to frost skills, fire skills, frost skills. The problem is, as of right now, some classes can have I shouldn't say infinitely, but let's say there are some specs in the game that have as much as like a 20% chance as other specs to actually get relevant items, simply because they have one modifier that can roll so many different things that other classes don't really care about. So yeah, we felt that players were not getting enough of a certain currency either in the early game or to sustain adding mods to maps. So my only thought about this is, why not make higher tier maps with like modifiers roll more often? That's certainly one thing that was kind of annoying, is that you basically have to modify the maps yourself. which, especially if you're trying to make them rare, can be a bit annoying. I don't know a better way to put it. It's like maybe this is something in Path of Exile 1 that's common, but I realized very quickly what I was going to have to do. And I was thinking like, boy, this could get really annoying. It's like fun, but not really. I don't know a better way to put it. Regal orb drop rates increased by about 40%, which is good. You need to be making lots of money, and I found it was very frustrating to put my time in being, do I sell my rares to get money, or do I disenchant them to actually get Regal orbs? And it was a bit annoying that, like, I mean, choices are good, and making the player make choices are good, but like once you ran out of Regal orbs, you basically can't do much. So you just had to disenchant everything. But then if you can't gamble, you know, you can't ensure that I'm getting a necklace, right? There's no guarantee if I run a map that I could get a necklace. But if I gamble, I can at least get a necklace. So money is kind of important to making sure that the player can continue to get something that they want. Disenchanting is 6 mod rares to give 2 Regal shards instead of 1. So right now you can sell a 6 mod rare and it makes a gajillion dollars, or you can disenchant it to get 2 Regal shards, which is fine. The only, and this is going to be a bit of a niche issue I have with this, little niche right here, little niche. Sometimes modifiers do 2 things. So you'll see 6 modifiers, but actually it's 1 that's counting twice. So that might be annoying in this situation. I haven't noticed that. I'm not sure why that's a thing. I'm not too used to ARPGs, but certainly that was a bit odd. Lesser Jeweler Orbs drop rate increased by about 33%. Yeah, there was probably not enough. Now, these are what allow you to increase the sockets in your abilities from 2 to 3. There's clearly not enough. I had way too many friends. In fact, 33% might not even be enough, but we'll see. I had way too many friends that literally could not find any, or could only find like 1. I found 2, which was the majority of what I needed them for. But like I've seen a lot of people, they'll get into like endgame maps and they'll have found 1. So even this 33% might not be enough. All it does is increase your sockets on ability from 2 to 3. It's kind of needed to continue to scale. So reduce the drop rates of Chaos Orbs slightly as they are less valued, and so that it doesn't consume so much of the rare currency drop pool. I don't think I've ever used a Chaos Orb. So maybe just remove them. If they're that shit, maybe just remove them from the game. I don't know. This causes currencies such as Exalted Orbs to increase somewhat. So basically, if a monster decides to drop a rare currency, it then pulls from a list of rare currency. By reducing the chance that it's a Chaos Orb, it increases the chances it's going to be something else. Now, maybe you could say I should be using Chaos Orbs more often to like try to re-roll items. I don't know. They're like annoying to me. I don't know a better way to put it. I feel how I feel, and you can't stop me. Gem Cutter's Prism drop rates increased by 500%, which is probably good. Gem Cutter's Prisms now increase quality on gems by 5% instead of 1%. Yeah, I think I gotten 3 throughout the game. Total 3. I put 2 of them on a ability, realized I got it to 2% quality, realized really quick that I don't care anymore, because like this is so irrelevant. Now, my only problem with this one is this is going to start massively increasing some builds effectiveness, and some people say good, but like the game, especially in the end game, is really not hard enough as of right now, and this is going to be a recurring problem, and I hope people listen to me on this one. The game at present is, oops, that's Pandora. The game at current is not hard enough to warrant ginormous gigabuffs like this. If your abilities start doing these massive effects, the game is just, again, I think what they need to do is apply a flat 30% health buff to endgame mobs. I think they should just do that right now, and then we could maybe try to buff people up again from there. But right now, endgame mobs, they're not tanky enough. Most of them, you just AoE from the other end of the map and they never touch you. For a game that is pretty difficult right up until Act 4 to 5, it's weird that it just gets so simplistic. The only thing you really need to do is like dodge mages. Common mages are the most deadly enemies in the world. I literally don't think Goku and Vegeta combined could beat a couple common mages. They are deadly. But other than that, yeah, I mean, your average enemy is just not really that hard. Even getting trapped by enemy mobs, it's not really that big a deal. It doesn't really happen, truth be told. So I think going into this, the game needs to push the player enough that the player feels that by doing this, they're rewarded and they actually feel good and they think, oh man, this game has been so hard. This is going to increase my odds of beating maps way better, right? So that's just my opinion. I wouldn't increase on-game damage. On-game damage, I would maybe even reduce by a tiny bit. I think enemies aren't tanky enough. ARPGs often run into this issue. Enemies aren't tanky enough to combo through, but also they do so much damage that you can't really tank them. Now, you're not really meant to tank them, and I wouldn't want a situation that happened like in Diablo 4. One of the big reasons I got so bored of Diablo 4 is eventually enemies couldn't damage me through my lifesteal and stuff. I had to dodge like the big abilities, but other than that, like I just ran through enemies, I just tanked everything, right? And that got really boring. So maybe they should, if enemies can tank through everything, maybe we adjust that in the future. But for right now, I think enemies just don't live long enough for you to combo, for you to have fun with. And giganormous buffs like this are going to kind of exacerbate that, but we'll see. So these are all deployed in the game right now. Map mod changes. Like with rares, we felt that players were not being rewarded enough for the difficulty that was being added by map mods. We have significantly increased the value of all our prefix map mods. Okay, we've changed all map prefix mods, but some example changes we've deployed are rarity mods have been increased by 2.5x. I'll have to see what they mean by this in game. This could go, sorry, my mental, I'm like, maybe I'm not understanding it properly, but there's like 2 or 3 ways this could be done, and I'm not sure what it's actually doing. Is it in game? It is in game. I'll have to check that later. I suppose I could check it right now, but the game really doesn't like OBS being. Quantity mods have had extra rarity added to them. At the end of this video, I'll go check real quick. Quantity mods have had extra rarity added to them. This is now in a later patch. Well, then it's not now, but okay. Quantity mods were probably. Yeah, we'll see. We removed the bottom tier of some mods. That's probably good. Some mods did so little that they didn't do anything. It was kind of pointless. You are much more likely to roll modifiers that affect drops or pack size rather than less useful mods. Well, once again, I'm just wondering, how much does loot need to be increased? Because there are some map modifiers you can get to like all maps that increase the quality of all drops permanently for the rest of that character's life. So when you combo that with things like this, with blah blah blah, I'm just wondering, because it's not like there's not like a tier above rare, right? It goes common, uncommon, rare, and then the mostly useless tier, which is unique. There's no like tier in between, right? So if I'm loading my entire inventory with rares and every rare can now be useful, that very much does make the game a little bit more tedious. I don't want to be looting 30 rares per map and then I have to go check every single one of them. That's tedious, boring, unfun. Like I'm not a loot factory, right? Like I don't want to be a factory worker like scanning every item like beep beep. Like I want like 5, maybe 6 rares per map tops. Yeah, I'm just a bit worried that the game will get tedious. I know Path of Exile 1 players are accustomed to tedium, but it's not really my thing. In addition, it has been identified that some areas are not being affected by the increased number of monster packs mod as they should be. We'll be fixing these maps to work correctly in a later patch. I've never noticed these. Well, whatever, we'll see. Again, this whole map change, I'm going to have to see it in game. I've played about 5, 6, 7 hours of maps right now. Probably more. I don't know. I played a lot last night as well. I would have to see these in game to get a true opinion. If you guys know what these mean, well, good for you. I don't like having bad opinions on things I don't understand, and so I don't fully comprehend some of this stuff, so I'll have to see it later. Unlucky drop protection. One of the major issues we've identified are outlier unlucky drops. A single unique boss dropping badly, especially early on, can significantly affect your character. Well, this is true. If a single, is they're basically saying right here, no more than 50% of a unique monster's drops can be gold. So basically, you kill one of the early game bosses, and instead of getting some blues, maybe a rare to kind of like get you through your run, you get gold and only gold, and maybe like a, I don't know, potion or some crap, right? So, that's not good. X bosses and map bosses will always drop at least one rare. I don't like that change. Let me explain my thoughts here. I don't think always dropping one rare is good for the game. I think getting a rare should be a good feeling. Not getting a rare should be a bad feeling. I do think bad feelings are good, because how do you have a good feeling if you don't have a bad feeling? If you always feel good, then you will just normalize down to feeling normal. It's drugs, that's gambling, right? That's literally how human brain work normalize things, right? So if every time you're lucky, then you stop feeling lucky. And if you're never unlucky, then you never feel bad. So then you feel good when you're lucky. That's just human psychology right there. But a lot of people want to always feel lucky. They're like, me want always win. Yay. But then you get bored and you're one of those old people just sitting there pulling slots with a dead hand, you know, dead eyes, just sitting there. Because this has just been your life. You're so useless. You win, you just go, yay. Who cares? Like, the first of these changes is more significant than first appears because players can't see the difference between normal and rare gold piles. You will get more equipment and currency items which can take more advantage of the rarity that unique monsters provide. So basically what they're saying, with no more than 50% of the unique monster drops being gold, a lot of times the rare drops were actually being eaten by gold. So your rare drop would end up being gold. So by limiting this, they're limiting the odds that you don't roll anything, but you roll a lot of gold. Woo! Okay. There was an issue where move-only command was name locking. This would often result in your character confusingly attacking in an unexpected direction while holding down this action. I actually have seen that a few times. It's weird. Move only, no longer name locks. It's not a huge change, but it's kind of weird. It's never really impacted my game that much, but I've always found it weird when they do that. It's kind of weird to me. This is like a major change that they're like, look at this, guys. Like, this should probably just be a bug fix, but I guess some people get annoyed by it. It's not really that big a deal. It never happens. Yeah. Concern for players in endgame is accidentally missing rare monsters. In addition, many maps did not have the number of rare monsters that they should have. We'll be making the following changes in an upcoming patch. This is not live. Rare monsters now appear on the minimap when there are 200 monsters remaining instead of 50. Many maps have had additional rare monsters added to them to make sure there is a minimum number in every map type. Once again, my only issue is this just my dead old person rare thing? Is this my slot machine? Rares aren't challenging right now. They could eventually add enough modifiers to them that you randomly get screwed over. That would be funny, I guess, for a little bit. But like on average, you're killing most of them so quickly, it's just not even interesting at this point. So am I just killing with 200 monsters? I'm just sitting there. Oh, there's a rare. Nothing. 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 Right? Like, is that just me? I'm just killing rare mobs, getting the rare from them, identifying it, and going, oh well. I don't know. It's just I like what they've got right now, and I feel like 1 change, sure, 2 change, sure, 3 change, sure, 4 change, 5 change. It's like, bro, you had an idea, you had a plan, you wanted items to be significantly less common, and I feel they're already swinging way too quickly into making it way more common. You know, a bunch of these changes combined are going to quickly add up to where I'm literally unloading piles of rares and identifying them, and unloading another pile and identifying them. And I don't want to sit there and just be identifying rares all day. I want to play the game, right? I want to play the game. I want to have fun in it. So just instead of doing this whole weird thing with rare monsters and trying to like double the loot drops and all that, just add more boss monsters to the maps. They're fun. I like doing them. Most people like doing them. There's a lot in the game. So maybe instead of like every 10 maps you get to do a boss, and I think it's actually less than every 10. It's like every 20 maps. I don't know. Okay. Conclusion, we'll be posting patch notes for these changes we deployed. For a full list of what's been deployed, check the patch notes here. So this is not correct right here. Where is it? There we go. Sorry. So for the full list of patch notes here, yeah, these are the ones that are in the game, but I'm pretty sure I went over those. So that's the upcoming patch. Personally, I think it's a good patch overall. I'm just a bit worried, as I keep mentioning, because it's a slippery slope, right? You buff this, you buff this, you buff this. It's just like modifiers in game, right? You do 10% more here, 10% more here, 10% more here, 10% more here. You add like 50% more here, and all of a sudden you're doing like 5 times the damage, right? And that's exactly how I feel this is gonna go. I think they're doing too many changes all at once to loot. And as a dude who already was playing maps and already increasing my gear pretty quickly, I definitely think in the early game there wasn't enough loot. In the mid game there was still probably not enough, but we'll see. But man, definitely on maps, like once I got the maps, like I was not really feeling squished for loot. But okay. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody. Give me your thoughts. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to leave a comment down below. Tell me if you agree, disagree with me. I'm sure lots of you would disagree with me on this stuff, but thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody. And as always, have a great rest of your day.